Hey everyone, welcome to season 11 of the Tension Podcast. We are a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Curl, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
What's up? Hopefully you're still with us and either you're encouraged or I don't know. I see a lot of people that get encouraged by this conversation, especially as we go, because you find that you have a silent minority, a tribe of people that you realize that you're not alone, that you're not the only one that can kind of feel this way, and that we're actually talking about it, because there's a lot of times these conversations don't happen in the church or get you fired if you're working for a church.
Well, I've also been told, and I appreciate when people say this, because it's a marked choice for us. We don't just live in the crappy side of this. We do try to talk about solutions and how to fix it and how we go about moving forward, because while the disaster porn can get us more listeners, I believe that part of our job as Christians is to acknowledge what is bad, but then work to fix it. And we talked about that a little bit last week, and we'll talk about it again more today. But so the whole point of our show is the first part of this might feel negative because we have to talk about a problem, but we're not going to leave without some sort of solution. So if you're with us for the first time, thank you for joining us. If you are new this season, we're looking at the idea that cultural Christianity is killing the American church. We've spent the last 5 weeks talking about different places where cultural Christianity is negatively or has negatively impacted the American church. If you like today's episode, we do invite you to go ahead and check those past 5 out. I'd start at the beginning of the season and then work your way up to here. After today, we have 2 more episodes left in this season before we wrap for our holiday break in November and December. We're going to start today where we've started every episode this season, reminding you what our definitions of cultural Christianity are so that we can all be on the same page as we talk about this. We have defined cultural Christians in 2 ways. First, they are spiritually immature Christians who have been discipled more by evangelical culture than the actual Bible. And then the secondary definition is they are Christians who are more concerned with applying their Christian preferences to the culture than they are in achieving unity in Christ with those who may have different preferences. For a lot of the episodes this season, we have tried to be data-based. We didn't want to let our personal feelings dictate things, but rather see if those feelings were backed up by data. Today's different, though. Today is based on a quote that I read and then the rabbit hole of thoughts I went down after reading it. So for those of you who like the numbers, sorry to disappoint you, those will come back next week. For those of you who prefer a more free-flowing conversation, this week is for you. So we hope that you'll stick around with us and enjoy it. But before we get to the meat of it, if you like the show, please leave us a rating wherever you listen or watch. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help if you wrote up a small review. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button on today's video. All right, here's the idea for this week, the big idea. This is what I read that inspired this episode. Some people will withhold food from 100 people out of fear that one person might not need it or deserve it. Others will feed 100 people out of concern that one might really need it. Let me repeat that because it could get tricky the first time you hear it. Some people will withhold food from 100 out of fear that one person might need it or might not need it or deserve it. Others will feed 100 people out of concern that one might really need it. I read that and it resonated with me because at different times in my life, and honestly, even now in different situations, I've been both versions of the people that quote talked about. I have been the guardian that said, we have to put up the guardrail so that no one takes advantage of this. And I've been the person that says, you know what, just give it away. If they take it, they need it. And I'm going to trust that it was okay. I think if we're honest with ourselves, most of us fall into one of those categories more often than the other, but we fall into those categories in different things throughout our lives. Eric, how do you resonate with that quote? Because you haven't spent as much time with it as I have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the, I think it's situational. I'm not sure that there's people that 100% believe it one way or the other. And I think that's kind of like part of my rhetorical thesis for this season is like, at least be consistent. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to withhold from 100 because one person might not need it, like if you're going to go, okay, yeah, I'm gonna vet every single situation to make sure that what I'm giving, what I'm doing, what I'm, the resources I'm providing, I'm going to do the due diligence on everything that I do. Great. Okay, cool. If that's the way you want to live your life, awesome. At least you're consistent. Or on the other one, it's like, if I'm just going to be free and give it away and believe, the mindset of like, it's up to me to be faithful. It's up to God to do the work, right? Like that's kind of what I've heard on that side. I'm just going to give it. And, like in here in the temperate climate of New Mexico, there are a lot of visibly homeless people that are panhandling. And there's a big mindset of like, well, I'm not going to give it to them because how do I know that I'm not going to give them money because how do I know they're not going to just use it for drugs? So I'm going to go, if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to go buy them food. Like, great, fine. And then on the other hand, there's the other side that's like, well, my job is just to be generous, and it's God's job to work in their heart and whether or not they're going to whatever. Like, so some people are going to resonate either way with that saying. I think on a funnier version, I think about it growing up with like resources in video games, because there's going to be something where like you get this resource. It's like, oh, this is a really rare resource or piece of ammunition. Guess what? I'm going the whole damn game without using it at all. I'm going to hoard it because what if I might need it for that one thing that one time? So I think if anything, some of this exposes a little bit more of your own personal anxieties over things. And so it's going to weigh on your heart on like, going back to last week's episode, I'm not going to give the thing to that person because of their personal responsibility and they deserve to be where they're at, or I don't want them using it for something that I wouldn't use it for, or whatever. In the same way as like when you give a gift, do you care what that person does with that gift, or was the fact that you just gave that gift to that person what matters,
And I don't think that either one of these sides of these types of people are inherently better or worse than the other. I think there are positives and negatives to both. I think motivations are kind of what determines good versus bad or virtuous versus non-virtuous.
Yeah.
I do acknowledge that. All right. So Eric, I know you like personality types and those type of things, especially when it comes to business.
Go on.
There is a personality type of thing called the 5 voices that is gaining more and more popularity in the business and church leadership world. And one of those 5 voices is the guardian. And the guardian is the person who they hold the creative and the pioneer in check. Where the creative and the pioneer, they're the ones who have these ideas and they go after it. The guardian by nature asks the questions and sets up the systems to protect the people who want to run fast and go far. And about 30% of the American population is naturally a guardian.
Yep.
Of that 30%, 70% are men. So it's a high chance if you're a man listening to this, you have that guardian idea in you. So It is not inherently bad to be the person who withholds the food out of fear that someone might not really need it, or to put systems around it. So it can be, but I don't want you to think we're coming in here saying that thought on the front end is always and forever bad. But when I think of this quote, what has stuck with me, and the reason I wanted to do this episode is because I think of the story of Jesus leaving the 99 when I hear this quote. And most of us love the idea that Jesus would leave the 99 for us. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. It makes us feel great that Jesus would leave them to come after me when I've messed up and I've gone astray. But we rarely ever look at that story from the perspective of the 99. And if we're honest, most of us listening to this spend more of our time as the 99 than as the 1. When Jesus leaves the 99 to chase the 1, it's at the detriment of the 99. The 99 are safer when Jesus is with them. They're more comfortable when he's there protecting them. But there are times when Jesus looks at the 99 and realizes that while they might not be as safe or as comfortable, and while they might be slightly inconvenienced if he leaves them to chase the one is in desperate need of his help, and they will be in much worse shape if he doesn't go after them. And that's when he makes sure the 99 are okay and then goes to get the one. And as I think through this story, that's what has resonated with me the most, because I want people to give the food regardless if I'm the one needing it, to give the thing. Change food for tax break or tax credit or whatever it might be. I want that when it benefits me, but when it doesn't benefit me, it's a lot harder to justify it naturally. And I think that's a natural feeling inside a lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going back to what I said, is like, at least be honest about some of these things. Whether you feel like you're in the, and I'll just break it down like your personality conversation. It's like gas or brakes. Whether you're gas or brakes, because everybody needs a little bit of that, right? It's like, because if you don't have gas in the relationship, you don't have somebody on the gas pedal, then you're never getting out of the house. You're never going to Disney. You're never experiencing anything. If you don't have brakes in the relationship, then you have no budget. You have no house eventually, right? And neither one of them are wrong. Just know that that's where you're at and admit that. And so same thing is like, man, in my life, when it comes to when I'm hungry and I'm tired, yes, I want to go out and recklessly spend on fast food. But when I'm the one that's looking at the budget and other people in my family are like, oh, I don't want to cook tonight. Can we just get whatever? I'm like, nah, we've got, whatever at home, And so it's like, when does it benefit me most? That's generally when I'm in either the 99 or the one, And so I totally agree with you on that, is that recognizing that we don't need to live in a scarcity mindset when we're a part of the 99, because Jesus wouldn't leave. It's the same as the anytime the disciples are out in the boat caught in a storm, right? If you've ever been to the Israel, where they say that happened on the Sea of Galilee, and it's like, well, right before then Jesus was praying, and so he would probably be up on this hill. So when you're in the boat and the storm rolls over, he was seeing them the whole time, and he knew that they were safe. Then they started freaking out, and he's like, oh my God. Oh my me, He's like, oh my
dad.
I gotta walk down. Oh my dad, I gotta go take care of these guys. Okay. And then he comes down and he's like, guys, what are you afraid of? Right? Same thing when he's sleeping in the boat and the storm happens. He wakes up. He's like, what the heck? Why are you waking me up? What's going on? Same situation. It's like, if you're part of the 99, Jesus didn't just leave you willy-nilly. He's not just like, well, screw them, I'm going after the one. They're safe. They're safe. Even though we feel like we're not. We're safe. So acknowledge that, like, if you're living in that scarcity mindset, is it actually true? Like, is it true that if I, have to pay more in taxes so that others can benefit, I'm going to whatever, doom and gloom that it feels like it's going to happen. Is it true that if there's a more generous and liberal asylum and naturalization policy for immigration, that somehow it's going to poison the blood of our country? Probably not, right? Like, there's lots of different things that you can go down in our modern equivalent of these things to say, if I do give up a little bit, or if I'm willing to allow someone to go after the one and quote unquote leave me behind, is it really leaving me behind? Or is it going into unsafe areas to pull that person into safety where I am at? I would more equate it to, like, if you've ever been a lifeguard or seen a lifeguard, like, I'm on the shore. There's 99 of us on the shore. Jesus is the lifeguard pulling the David Hasselhoff, toga flopping in the background, hair going, I'll be ready. And he's like jumping into the water for the one that's drowning. And I'm like, whoa, lifeguard. I'm over here. Why are you leaving me? Well, moron, because you're standing on the sand. You're not in the water drowning. Okay. So it's okay if Jesus wants to Pamela Anderson jump in and go after the one, save him, come back and do CPR.
Those things didn't move when she jumped.
If Wendy Peffercorn is going to jump in after Squints,
Oh, Wendy
I'm okay.
Peffercorn. Okay.
Because I'm on the side of the pool. It's okay.
So what's this got to do with cultural Christianity? I mean, obviously,
I don't know. I missed the point at this point. I just made up some stuff. Jesus is David Hasselhoff. Who knows?
Who's Pamela Anderson?
I don't know. I don't want to say the Canadian Jesus.
So here's where it ties in my opinion. I think cultural Christianity, the version that is more concerned with applying their Christian preferences to the culture than they are in achieving unity in Christ with those who may have different preferences. I think that group is so used to being the 99 that anytime the one steps up and asks for help, they see it as something being taken from them. And because it feels like something's being taken, that group of people wants to make the one jump through 37 hoops to prove they actually need it because they can't fathom the idea of someone who might not need it actually getting it. And I'll give you an example of something I have seen personally in this. About a year or so.
Can I push back on that, or do you want to wait until after you give the
You can push back on it. Go for it.
Okay, because I'm wondering if maybe the 99 don't realize what it means to be the 99. Because I think even
that's
in this
fair
conversation,
too.
That's what's coming up for me is like, I feel like I am one of 99 lost when that's not actually part of the parable, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't even have that blessed assurance that I'm okay. And so in a sense, like we talked about with cultural Christianity, I need to apply my own personal well-being to Christianity as opposed to allowing it to apply to me, instead of having that blessed assurance of Jesus is up on that mountaintop and he sees everything, all the storms that are going on in my life, and he's got it under control and I'm okay, right? Jesus left us on the shore to go to the one, and I'm okay on the shore. Instead of realizing that and being mature as a Christian in that, my Christian immaturity causes me to go, oh no, he's leaving me because I'm the one. Now I'm the lost one because he doesn't have enough love to go around. It's the immaturity of a child who has a younger sibling being born and thinks somehow mommy and daddy aren't going to love me as much.
Yeah. So I think my example ties into that too.
Let's do it.
About a year or so ago, a church in my area was doing a backpack drive before school started. It's a great ministry, great way to serve the community.
Okay.
Have you heard this one? Have we talked about this before?
You've told me this one. Uh-huh.
Okay. Ready. I don't know if I shared it on here or not. And I think an important part of this story is this church is not in an affluent area. This church is made up by good old country folk. And like my little town is the big town in my county. They're from one of the smaller towns further out. Oh. So the people who were doing this backpack drive were scraping together what they had to care for those around them. But as part of the giveaway, they said it was for, quote, Stokes County families. They wanted it to be for families that were only from our county. You want to serve people of your county and show you care about them? Love it. This is the benefit of the people around us. Sure. But part of their process during the backpack giveaway was to check the IDs of the person getting the backpacks to ensure they lived in our county instead of just giving away the dang backpack. They were more concerned that someone in need might take advantage of their kindness, so they put a barrier up to prevent it instead of just trusting Jesus that the people who showed up would be the ones who needed it the most.
They were so concerned with the desperate mother or father from a county over that was trying everything they could to get their kid a backpack.
Who very well may have lived closer to their church, just cross county lines.
Who knows? Or they scrounged together all the money they had to make sure that they got gas. They're using gas money to go to get a backpack as opposed to anything else.
And for me, and this is where I think it ties back to you, Eric, and it ties back to this whole thing. It's the lack of trust that ties this all
Yep.
together.
Yep.
Some people would, maybe they're right when they say this, say cultural Christians care more about protecting themselves than caring for others. That's a cynical view
Oh,
of cultural Christians.
oh,
And that,
I would say that again because I think that does resonate.
so the cynical view is that cultural Christians care more about protecting themselves than caring for others.
I
There
don't even
might
know
be
that
some
I'd call
truth.
that a cynical view. I would just say
Well,
that could be an underlying view. I don't know that maybe I would say that you wouldn't come out and say that. Like I remember Matt Chandler had a conversation about like when we all walk around like we think we're God, right? And it would just be better if you said, well, I'm not doing this because I am God. Like if you said that, we'd be like, oh, you're crazy. Okay, great. We can treat you differently and we can help you now that you've actually admitted it out loud. But we act like it, even though we wouldn't come out and say it. Like the reason why I think most people are Christian, especially cradle to the grave Christians, are like because it benefits you. And I think going back to your Rhett and Link comment, it's like at some point, Christian who grew up in church gets to becoming an adult and sees the world around them that does not benefit them or those they care about anymore. And they go, well, I no longer need this because it doesn't benefit me.
but here's why I say it's cynical. And I think you might track with this.
Okay.
Just like in the first episode of the season, I said that Christian nationalism was a symptom of cultural Christianity, and cultural Christianity was the actual root cause of that, where people were
Yep.
discipled more by evangelical culture, or they were like immature Christians.
Yep.
I think that that feeling of caring more about protecting yourselves than caring for others is a symptom of a deeper lying condition where the root of it is these cultural Christians don't trust that Jesus, they don't trust Jesus will take care of others and still take care of them at the same time.
Right. There's not enough to go
There
around.
is a lack of trust. So because of that lack of trust, they
Scarcity
cling to
mindset.
protecting themselves more than caring for others. If
Yep.
you are
It's
part of the 99, you're okay with Jesus leaving you for the one when you trust he's put you in a safe spot.
yep.
And when you know that he will come back for you once he finds the one. But if you don't trust Jesus, you find it at best scary and at worst insulting that he would dare leave you for the other person who needs him.
Yeah.
So if you don't trust Jesus will take care of you and provide for you while also providing for the one, you will protect yourself more than care for the other.
Look at the book over your left hand shoulder there, right? It's that imaginary Jesus. You've created an imaginary Jesus that doesn't actually exist. That isn't the real Jesus. You've created a Jesus that says, "Oh, my life isn't perfect yet. Jesus is still doing a work in me. My life isn't perfect, so I'm not secure enough to stand on my own." Or somehow, because of the way that we've been raised, right? There's a very performative based system of rewards from Jesus. I do good, I get good. And so that's part of that cultural Christianity thing. If you believe that everything you've gotten has been because of your hard work or because of your exceptionalism, now all of a sudden, when Jesus leaves, quote unquote, to go for somebody that maybe didn't do a thing to earn it, now it shakes your own foundation of like, oh no, well, maybe I built and now that whole economy is upended. And I just keep going back to this word. It is a spiritual immaturity that causes these things. And I'm fine. At me, at Eric W712 on all major platforms. Tell me why I'm wrong. But I believe it is a spiritual immaturity that causes you to do that. In the same way as we talked about last week, it's like those faith and flag MAGA Republican gun owner guys that are like, that would protect, that want to, doomsday prep and protect their family at all costs. And I'm going to send somebody else to meet Jesus tonight. It's like, okay. All right, bro. Okay. Got it. Yep. You have an immature faith because of your view of the limited resources around you and your incorrect view of who Jesus really is.
And while we will never reach full maturity in Christ, once we become more mature and we actually trust Jesus to do the things he said he'd do, the world around us that is changing so fast gets a little less scary.
Right.
when we believe that not only does Jesus chase us down and fight till we're found when we're off on our own, but he also
Woo!
protects us and leaves us in safe areas when we're the 99 so he can go find the one, then we're okay with him going after the one because we trust him. We trust our God. We trust our Lord. We trust in his safety and his protection. For us to truly make an impact on the culture around us, we got to stop being so dang scared that someone is going to slip through the cracks and abuse the system. We have to trust Jesus is in control and he's going to do good through our desire to help, even if or even when someone takes advantage of it.
Yep.
We have to trust that Jesus knows what he's doing. That if someone from the next county takes a backpack, that they needed it, and Jesus was going to multiply that in their life because they're the ones who needed it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a level of trust that can only be built through an intimate relationship with Jesus himself. And you do not develop that intimate relationship solely through reading the Bible on Sunday mornings, solely through learning about him. You have to experience who he is and what he's about and have personal connections and personal experiences with him. I'm getting a little Pentecostal here, but you have to do more than just read your Bible in your quiet time in the morning or read that devotional or listen to that sermon. It takes more than that to develop a deep, intimate relationship. Sometimes you just got to sit with him. And sometimes you got to trust him and go do the thing that's scary because you know he's good. And then next time you'll have a little bit more trust and then a little bit more trust. But spiritually immature Christians, they haven't taken the time to do that. They've been discipled by evangelical culture more than they have been discipled by spending time with Jesus himself.
Yep. I would point out one other thing. We're using this example of the parable of the 99. Remind me again, what are we talking about when the 99 and the 1? Like 99 what?
Sheep.
And the 1 is
sheep.
Okay, great. So I think the other aspect is like you said, you got to sit with Jesus, but you also have to understand what the 1 is. Because the moment you say, oh, he's leaving us 99 sheep to go after a goat, what? We probably wouldn't say that, but we don't acknowledge that the 1 that we don't want him to go after is a goat.
Even if they have brown skin.
Yeah, right. We don't see him as fellow sheep. They're like the example you brought up. They're from that other county, right? Or what's going on currently as we record this, there are Christians.
They're from Haiti.
From Haiti that are here legally, right? And yet
Venezuela.
we're demonizing Christians are demonizing them. And what's so upsetting too in that aspect is like some of y'all's churches are helping churches in those countries that those people are coming from. Some of
You're
y'all
doing mission trips down there.
You have mission trips. You have friends that you're like, oh, the moment that we can help you get a visa to get into the United States, we want you to come over here and do this and do that. It's like, and I'm going to say this because I know it's with some of my Facebook friends. Some of y'all are in this country and you came from that other country where that church was, and you become a naturalized citizen. And now you're saying the same things because I see it. I see it on your story. I know it. I know it's true. So that brings us all the way back to the song that you quoted. The whole reason it blew up 6-7 years ago, the Reckless Love, was because, oh, how can God's love be reckless? This very conversation is what proves that it actually is, because from the standpoint of the immature Christian, you're looking at what Jesus is doing is like reckless. But then out of the same mouth, you're like, oh, the Jesus's love would never be reckless. Jesus would never have a reckless action in his life. Then why don't you give the friggin' backpack to the person without the ID? You don't believe it. You don't even believe it. Oh, well, those Haitian Christians in here, we need to deport them. Then you don't actually even believe. You don't actually believe what you say about the reckless love of God. That Jesus would never do anything reckless. That everything he does is on purpose. So why wouldn't he save somebody from Haiti? Why wouldn't he bring somebody from Haiti to Springfield, Ohio, and, make that part of a redemption story? Not that they need to come to America to be saved. I don't want anybody to feel that way.
To give a little context, though, just so people who don't know you understand the emotion behind what you're saying, can you tell people where you lived before you currently where you currently live?
I used to live in Ohio. And let me tell you something. I now live in a border state. So when I hear any take that. When I hear any politician or anybody that goes, there are millions and millions of, thugs and blah, blah, blah crossing the border, I like, where? Where? And I've been in Ohio. I've been in communities that are more Muslim than anything else in Southeast Michigan. Guess what? We're okay. Some of y'all need to get out of your small town. Try that in a small town. Why is that such a big issue with now you start to see the difference here? Some of y'all need to get out of there and start to realize that the people that Jesus is going after are also sheep just like you. They may be brown sheep. They may be black sheep. And just because you're a white sheep doesn't mean that they're not in the same situation you are.
And I want to be explicit by saying this as well. We don't have to agree on the policies to care for these people. We can think the best way to care for them is A or B. We do not have to agree that they're both the same. But as Christians, as Christ followers, we cannot be so consumed with ourselves that we can't think of caring for others. There is a difference between thinking, voting, wanting something that cares for people in a different way than someone else versus thinking, wanting, voting for something that puts yourself above them out of protection and self-preservation. And
we should start with the understanding that as Christians, we need to care for these people. But if your conversation is, we need to care for these people, but we need to care for these people not at the expense of blank. We need to care for these people as long as any of that conversation, that's not saying we need to care for these people. So as Christians, we need to agree on, we need to care for these people, period. Is that children in school that don't have enough money or resources to pay for their own school lunches? We need to care for these people, period. Is this human beings that are coming into this country legally or illegally? We need to care for these people, period. How we do that, we can disagree on, right? Whether it's women who are in a situation where they need health care for their own reproductive rights. We need to care for these people, period. Let's start there. Not, they need to think about what they've done. Not, oh, you know what? They need to take more personal responsibility. Not, if they didn't want to get pregnant, they shouldn't have had sex. Not, they shouldn't be in this country illegally. Not, whatever else it may be. We need to care for these people because they are human beings. I'm a sheep. They're sheep. End of story.
Remember that at one time we were Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcised by those called the circumcised, which is done in the flesh by human hands. At that time you were without Christ, excluded from the citizenship of Israel and foreigners to the covenants of promise, without hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he is our peace, who made both groups one and tore down the dividing wall of hostility. In his flesh, he made of no effect the law consisting of commands and expressed in regulations, so that he might create in himself one new man from the two, resulting in peace. He did this so that he might reconcile both to God in one body through the cross, by which he put the hostility to death. He came and proclaimed the good news of peace to you who were far away, and peace to those who were near. For through him we both have access in one spirit to the Father. So then, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of God's household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself at the cornerstone. In him, the whole building, being put together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord. In him, you are also being built together for God's dwelling in the Spirit.
Mm.
The question I have is, do you actually trust that? Can you actually trust that to be true? It sounds good on the page, but when you think about who Paul was writing to, he was writing to the people who were the 99 in their culture, but were leaving that culture to come follow Jesus.
Yep.
At the same time, he knew there were people in that church who had been a part of the 99, the Jewish 99, who needed to accept the one back into them, that they had always othered themselves. And the question, since Jesus' death on the cross, has been, can you trust him enough to do the work that Paul writes in this letter?
Hmm.
Can we believe Jesus is our peace, who has made both groups one and torn down the dividing wall of hostility? I understand it's not easy. I understand it's not comfortable. But at no point would Jesus, any of the disciples, Paul, or the early church leaders have thought the Christian life was going to be comfortable.
Paul writing all these letters from a jail cell in Rome, and here I am, like in my HOA community, listening to people on.
I'm
Fox
wearing
News.
a $40 hoodie right now.
Seriously, like we're talking on podcast equipment about this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Paul's in jail in a foreign country, and we're sitting here like, well, I don't know if those Christians from that Caribbean country should actually be here, even though they've been here legally. Well, there was a president that wrote a little blah 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 blah. Like, stop. We got some backpacks here, and there's somebody in need of a backpack, but do they have ID? They have ID for that backpack? Because I need to make sure that arbitrary county line, that they're within that arbitrary county line and not within the need. Stop it.
For us to truly make an impact on the culture around us, we have to stop being so dang scared that someone is going to slip through the cracks and abuse the systems. We have to trust Jesus is in control and is going to do good through our desire to help, even if or even when someone takes advantage of it. Mm-hmm. This whole thing comes down to trust. All of cultural Christianity, everything that we have talked about this season, comes down to a trust in Jesus. Do we actually trust he is who he says he is, and that he will do what he says he will do? Do we have the relationship with him to have the experience to build that trust? I've said before, like, I may be holding on by a thread to the local American church, but I got no doubt who Jesus is. Yeah. I've got no questions about who he said he was, who he said he is, what he came to do, or what he continues to want to do. And I think for us, the way we move from cultural Christianity to being a disciple of Jesus is spending time with him, building the relationship with him, and learning to trust him. When we trust him, we can do the things he said for us to do. When we trust him, we don't have to worry about others getting an advantage by us helping them out. And to tease for next week, when we trust him, we can fire the horn dog pastor who sleeps with his secretary. But that's next week. If you have any questions or comments about today, feel free to reach out to us on social or send us an email to continue the conversation. Eric is at EricW712 on all the major platforms. I am at Jonathan_Corona on them as well. You can email us at hello@tensionpodcast.com. Next week, we are going to talk about those sexual abuse scandals, because whether you know it or not, 31% of people who grew up in the church and left, they left because of sexual abuse scandals from pastors. So next week, we're talking about how cultural Christianity has valued cultural influence more than protecting women and children in the church. If you want that episode when it first comes out, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app if you haven't already. If you like the show, do us a favor and rate us and review us wherever you get podcasts. Share this episode with a friend if you found it interesting. And as always, thanks for making us a part of your day. We will talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.